to go, deeper into the whole creative process that is, being utilized, especially when it comes to the horror genre. And I would love to hear your perspective in terms of, what's the process of you from getting an influence or getting a simple idea for a movie and developing it through a whole concept? Like,
right.
is it intuitive? Is it more of a calculated approach where that you need to undertake a certain steps with it? Or just walk me through that.
If I want to try to make it myself, I take this one approach. If I just want to write a screenplay that either maybe I can do way down the line or sell it or get somebody else to produce it or what have you, then that's a different approach. Like, what I mean by that is, again, one of the things that I learned very early on was learning to write what you could actually shoot. Oh, like, if you write a movie that takes place, and you're living in the United States, but you write a movie that takes place in Greece and, this restricted location and has 150 people and, helicopter explosions and, world dominance and all that. That's going to be hard for an independent filmmaker to actually make themselves. It doesn't mean it's not a great idea and doesn't deserve to be written, but you have to know from day one, are you writing something that you want to go shoot? Or are you writing something for a spec screenplay or something like that? And if it's something that I'm going to shoot, I kind of reverse engineer the whole beginning section, meaning, what people do I have access to? What locations do I have access to? What kind of equipment do I have available to me? What can I write with those parameters? Now, with Ophelia, I've always been fascinated by psychiatric asylums from the past, late 1800s, early 1900s. Things were really weird in those places at that time. And I had met a gentleman that bought the remaining buildings of an asylum in southeastern Michigan. And he's like, of course you can use my building. So I was like, okay, I have that. And then in mid-Michigan, there's a location that's a giant 3-story manor that was owned by a wealthy family in the 1800s that they donated to the city of Lansing, and it is still furnished like it's the late 1800s, early 1900s. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I have those two things. From there, I developed this whole 3-movie universe based around those two locations. And I created a backstory of what I wanted to do. The doctor that was hired to run this facility back in the 1800s and what have you. So then, develop that backstory. And then I wrote the first screenplay, then started working on the second screenplay and thought, instead of trying to go out and, put pitch decks together, lookbooks, try to, raise a little funding or whatever, the gentleman that I wrote Seven Cells with, Robert McCann, we said, why don't we do a proof of concept? Why don't we actually shoot a short film and use that to try to get funding? And so we did, had a few $1,000s A lot of that went towards the location and food and stuff like that, but had enough to, there was only 3 people on the crew. There was me, there was an audio guy, Curtis, who's also a great producer and assistant director, and a makeup lady. And Bob was there as well. Robert, Bob McCann was there, where he figured out how to get our GoPro camera that we used for the face cam to Bluetooth to a tablet, so we could actually set up the shot, and kind of keep an eye on things, and we could play back the shot on that as well. So minimal people, one location, that's something that you can shoot. And that's the trick. If I would have wrote Ophelia or Bob and I would have wrote Ophelia with, 11 characters in it, and it started in, an apartment, and then, had these different quick scenes on their way to get to the house and, yada, yada, yada. It would have been very, very challenging to shoot with little money. Mm-hmm. But one person, 2 people in a single location, that's doable. Yeah. So that's the process of getting that stuff going. Then once you're in production, it depends on if you're a large movie or a small movie or what have you. But, you get the actors that you can trust and feel good with for the budget that you have, and you really work with them to get the best that you can do. And another thing I recommend to a lot of filmmakers is try to edit your own stuff, especially early on, because you'll get a gauge on how challenging it is to edit something in general. But as you get better at that, if you're a camera person and a director, you kind of start directing what you want to edit. And that's really a big trick, a big secret, is I can now just shoot the shots that I know I want to compile on the editing timeline. And that's because of years and years and years of editing. I edit movies and commercials and industrial pieces and interviews and, all sorts of stuff. So, again, it's kind of the perfect storm of everything, being a musician and meeting the MSU professor and Ivan and Chuck, and slowly building up, making a low budget movie, then another, and then, just keeping busy and keeping creating stuff and getting better and better and better and learning what works and what doesn't work. And, I don't know that my path, how it would have worked out if I had all the money in the world to make the first thing. Would I be the same person that I am now? And I don't think that's the case. I think in a different manner, and I believe that it's all. It took a while, but I believe it's all coming together. I've written 10 screenplays over the last 7 years that I believe are all very producible, high concept, quality screenplays. And now I'm back ready to make film. I wanted to learn. I made a bunch. I worked on some other people's projects. And then I took about 7 years to really hone the craft of writing.